Hey, happy fall, everyone. Just before I started recording this, I had to talk to my son, and it was all about consequences. If you don't do your schoolwork right, you don't get to go get a treat after school. Learning about consequences is always important because no matter what in life, sometimes there's good consequences. You practice hard, you work hard for the team, you do well in a game. That's a good consequence. Bad consequences, you don't do something right. There's good and bad consequences all the time. You don't do your school, you don't get a treat. The same is true with the market. And what we're seeing with a lot of the volatility this far, and probably will continue to see, is consequences, right? There's an action and there's a consequence. Okay. We've saw it throughout the last couple of years with rising interest rates, now falling interest rates. Okay. Inflation, all profit and statements, all kinds of things. There's consequences that then dictate things in the market. So let's just talk about a couple recent ones. Of course, the Fed lowering the rate is a big consequence. And while rate hikes caused havoc in the market, the lowering of the rate made the market jump a little bit, which is great. But on the flip side, a lot of times there's consequences good and bad when we're talking to the market. So when the interest rates drop, the good consequences, the market responds favorably. The bad consequences, pretty soon your fixed rates will drop too, which really hurts the demographic that you're probably in as a saver or someone's close to retirement where you have money put aside and you'd like to get some good returns. We've saw CD rates higher in the past few years than we've had in a long time. That also transferred over to fixed annuities and the caps on index annuities. We've talked about that a lot over the past couple of years, but I am going to just put this out here in the beginning, and then we're going to talk more about the market and what to expect this fall. But because of the interest rates dropping, we've already saw rates kind of come back on the fixed rates, fixed annuities, and also the caps on the index annuities. So right now, there's still plenty of companies where you can cap the returns at about 10% on the S&P. So how that works is if the market goes up, you get 10. If it goes up, 12%, you get 10. But that's locked in. And if the market falls the next year, you get a 0 rather than going backwards. So there's lots of studies and articles we've put out there about using indexed annuities as a bond alternative or as another asset class to be able to generate retirement income and kind of add some safety to your portfolio. So if you've still sat on the fence and haven't done anything, or you have money, that you had put in CDs, but now they're going to come due and you can maybe guarantee rates at a lower rate for a smaller period. If that's money you're not using, or if it's money from a 401k that you just really don't want all the risk to, now is really the time to look at alternatives in the fixed rates and especially the fixed index while the caps are high, because again, lowering rates will affect that. But now let's get into the market and what we're going to see that way. So market volatility is still expected to be pretty high this fall. We've saw it throughout already starting in August. It had a big drop, came back a little, had another drop, rallied good a few times and rallied after the Fed announced the rate cut. But volatility is probably had for one reason, and that's the election. Okay. And why? Well, it's because we don't like uncertainty. Okay. And the market is really companies, individuals. Okay. And when we are people who like certainty, we don't like the uncertainty, and an election is going to bring some uncertainty. Now, if we look at the past and historic examples, a Republican Democrat doesn't necessarily change the market. There's been good years and bad years when both have been in control of either party, in control of the White House or Congress. However that works, it doesn't really matter as far as historic data on what the market's done. But what does drive the market is policy. Okay. I'm going to talk about two examples that might give you an insight into this. First, if we go back into about 2017 and the Tax Cut and Job Act was created, where taxes were lowered, okay, and taxes were lowered on businesses. What you saw is a lot of growth in those businesses. They're paying less tax. We saw a better increase in the business. So that policy did turn out to positively affect a lot of industries, some more than others. Across the board, I would say an average of around 10%, like the S&P was about a 9% average, and there were some that benefited even more, around 15%, okay? So that is an example of a policy that had a positive effect on the market. Now let's look at another way. Let's look back at the Fed rate hikes that happened over the past few years. So if we go back in time, rates were low for a long time, and you've probably noticed as they were raising rates, it created havoc in the market. Some areas worse than others, okay? For example, small cap growth got hit the hardest. Why? Because those are companies that rely on a lot of funding to help their business grow. And now when funding or to finance their business while they're growing, okay, that means they don't have enough revenue for the growth that they have, therefore they're getting some financing. Now, with that said, when financing is more expensive, when the loans cost more, it hurts the growth, up to 50% of the small cap. But it hurt a lot of the growth companies. So the companies that weren't really affected by it were value, the small value, large value, but all the growth was hit, some worse than others, because of the interest rate changed, okay, when the interest rates started going up. That's another example. I want to use those two because there's two different types of policies, whether it was taxes or interest rates, and it affected companies either sometimes positive, sometimes negative. So policy very much affects the market. So as we're going into this next election, the results, what's going to come out of it is different policies, and policies can affect the market, good or bad. So hopefully this example gives you that insight. And so it's not about a party, it's about the policies that come with it, and what policies are driving the different policies can have an effect on the stock market. Now, all that said, what should you do? Well, if your account's with us, we're already taking care of it, right? Our portfolio management team is always looking out for this. For example, when the interest rate had started rising and it was affecting the small cap and all the growth companies, they had went more to value, okay? And it really kind of avoided the small cap for that period because it was not the right time to be invested in those companies. For someone who wants to get good returns and risk-adjusted returns, meaning to lower the risk and still maintain a good return. So they've made those changes and adjustments for you. So you don't have to worry. We're already looking at it. They're already, these are just two examples of policies, but there's lots of different policies that can affect different sectors, different types, segments in the market. They're already on it and looking for it. Now, if you're not with us and you have questions or you have accounts elsewhere, what I would say is, the whole stay in and hold on to it forever if you're in it with the long haul or your portfolio is, diversified. That's all great and said, but really, how is it? We need to be adjusting, especially as you're close to retirement. You don't want to make any panic moves. That's the wrong thing, okay? We don't want to just panic and sit in cash even over these next few months because you could miss out on some gains, right? A lot of times there's a drop and then there's a return. It's about being positioned right. However, if you have mostly mutual funds, it's hard to be positioned right, okay? Those funds have to follow the prospectus. They can't change the prospectus based on policy. If they're a small cap company, if they're a large cap company, they have to stay with that no matter what. Plus, they have so many companies inside of that. So what I would suggest is do a risk review. Let's just see kind of where you're sitting, how you're exposed, and if there's anything that you should do and make adjustments or changes to, okay? So that you're prepared to weather out this market volatility. So if you have questions on that, we'd be happy to run the risk return or risk analysis for you, give you any suggestions that might help you through this volatility. Again, with us, make sure that our team is already watching all the policy, any changes that could affect your portfolio. Again, I only named a few. There's lots of things with bonds and others that they're always looking for to make sure your portfolio gets good risk-adjusted returns, meaning avoiding the risk whenever possible and still maintaining a good gain. So call us with any questions. Be happy to chat more.